But when it comes to Mark Meadows, this seems very important. When it comes to Mark Meadows, we also today got a brand new, previously unheard assertion from his top deputy, Cassidy Hutchinson, about what Mark Meadows did around this time and why he did it. Now, we don't know why they held this piece of Cassidy Hutchinson testimony until today. We've heard so much from her in previous hearings, both on tape and in live testimony. But it is possible that the investigators on the January 6th committee have held this back until today because it's so bad for Mark Meadows, because they are continuing a legal battle with Mark Meadows to try to get him to testify to their investigation. This clip about Mark Meadows today points to Mark Meadows' state of mind.
Okay, so imagine being Donald Trump right now. You're sitting in the White House. You've got your second term. You've consolidated power. You've got loyalists everywhere. And then you find out that Mark Meadows, your former chief of staff, the guy who was with you through everything, the guy who stood by you during the most controversial moments of your presidency, just walked into a room with federal prosecutors and told them everything. Every meeting, every conversation, every strategy session where you planned how to overturn the 2020 election. Yeah, you heard that right. Mark Meadows, Trump's most trusted aide during his final days in office, has turned against him. He's cooperating with prosecutors. He's handing over documents. He's giving testimony. He's providing a roadmap for how to prosecute Donald Trump for trying to steal an election. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Basically, he found there wasn't anything to them, and so he then instead turned to trying to find constitutional loopholes to keep Trump in power anyway. That is, I know he lost. I am going to try to keep him in power anyway, knowing that he lost.
This is wild. And it's not just some minor aide. It's not some low-level staffer who Trump barely knew. This is Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff. The person who had access to everything, who was in every important meeting, who knew exactly what Trump was thinking and planning at every moment. And now he's telling federal prosecutors all of it. The panic in Trump world right now must be absolutely insane, because Meadows knows where all the bodies are buried. He knows every illegal thing that happened, every conspiracy, every attempt to pressure state officials, every false claim about election fraud that Trump knew was false, and he's giving it all up. He's cooperating. He's providing evidence. He's testifying before grand juries. This is the biggest betrayal Trump has faced from someone in his inner circle, and the timing couldn't be worse for him. Let me break down what Meadows is actually telling prosecutors, because the details are devastating. First, Meadows confirmed in sworn testimony that he warned Trump there was no massive fraud, that the election fraud claims Trump was making publicly were not supported by evidence, that Trump knew he was lying to the American people when he went on TV on election night and claimed victory. Think about that. Trump's own chief of staff is testifying under oath that Trump knowingly lied about winning the election, that he knew the fraud claims were false but promoted them anyway. That's not a difference of opinion. That's not Trump genuinely believing something that turned out to be wrong. That's Trump deliberately lying to overturn an election he knew he lost. That's criminal intent. That's exactly what prosecutors need to prove conspiracy charges. And Meadows is handing it to them on a silver platter. But it gets worse. Meadows isn't just providing general testimony. He's giving prosecutors specific details about strategy meetings, about conversations between Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and other lawyers, where they planned how to pressure state officials, where they coordinated efforts to promote baseless fraud allegations, where they discussed ways to overturn election results in key swing states. Meadows was in the room for all of this. He took notes. He has documents, he has communications, and he's giving everything to prosecutors. Legal experts are calling this a roadmap for prosecution. They're saying Meadows' cooperation is the most significant betrayal yet by a senior Trump insider, because unlike other people who have flipped, unlike Michael Cohen or other former Trump associates, Meadows was there for the most critical period. The weeks after the 2020 election, when Trump was actively trying to stay in power despite losing, Meadows saw everything, and now he's telling everything. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Meadows secured a federal pardon from Trump. Yeah, Trump pardoned him. Probably thought that would keep Meadows loyal. Probably thought that would prevent him from cooperating with prosecutors. But here's the thing, the pardon only covers federal charges. Meadows still faces potential state-level charges in Georgia and Arizona. He's still exposed, still vulnerable, still looking at possible prison time. So prosecutors still have leverage. They can still pressure him. They can still make his cooperation the difference between freedom and incarceration. And that's exactly what's happening. Meadows is cooperating because he has to, because the pardon Trump gave him doesn't protect him from everything, because he's more afraid of what state prosecutors can do to him than he is loyal to Trump. And this is becoming a pattern. Meadows is just the latest Trump loyalist to flip. Michael Cohen flipped years ago. Jenna Ellis flipped. Other aides and associates have cooperated with investigators. The circle of people still willing to protect Trump is shrinking. The legal walls are closing in. And every person who flips makes it easier for the next person to flip, because once you see that others are cooperating, once you realize that loyalty to Trump isn't worth spending years in prison, the calculation changes, the incentive structure changes, and more people start talking. That's what's happening right now. A cascade of cooperation, a collapse of omerta. Trump's inner circle is falling apart, and Meadows' betrayal is the biggest domino to fall so far. The White House is in panic mode. Trump allies are scrambling. Conservative media is trying to downplay it or claim Meadows is lying. But here's the thing, Meadows has documents. He has contemporaneous notes. He has communications that corroborate his testimony. This isn't just one person's word against another. This is hard evidence backed up by a first-hand witness who was there for everything. That's the nightmare scenario for Trump. That's what makes this so dangerous. That's why this story matters so much right now, because Mark Meadows just handed prosecutors everything they need to prove Trump committed crimes, and there's no walking that back. All right, so let's dig into exactly what Meadows is telling prosecutors and why it's so damaging, because the specific details of his cooperation reveal just how deep Trump's criminal exposure goes. Meadows has met with special counsel Jack Smith's team multiple times, not just once, not just for a quick interview, multiple lengthy sessions where he's been questioned about everything that happened in the weeks after the 2020 election. He's provided documents, internal White House communications, notes from meetings, messages between Trump and his legal team, all the stuff that prosecutors need to build a case. And he's testified before grand juries, under oath, facing perjury charges if he lies. That's serious cooperation. That's not someone hedging or trying to protect Trump while technically complying with a subpoena. That's someone who has decided to tell prosecutors everything and let the chips fall where they may. One of the most damaging pieces of Meadows' testimony involves what Trump knew about election fraud claims. Because Trump's defense has always been that he genuinely believed the election was stolen, that he was acting on advice from lawyers who told him there was fraud, that he honestly thought he won and was just fighting for what he believed was right. If that's true, if Trump genuinely believed his own claims, then it's much harder to prove criminal intent. But Meadows is destroying that defense. He's testifying that he personally warned Trump that there was no evidence of massive fraud, that Trump was told by his own advisors that the election fraud claims were baseless, that Trump went ahead and promoted those claims anyway, knowing they were false. That changes everything, because now it's not a case of Trump being misled or having bad information. It's Trump knowingly lying to the American people in an attempt to stay in power after losing an election. That's conspiracy, that's obstruction, that's potentially seditious conspiracy if prosecutors want to go there. Meadows is also providing details about specific meetings and strategy sessions that prosecutors previously only knew about through secondhand accounts. Now they have a first-hand witness who was in the room, who can testify about what Trump said, what Trump ordered, what Trump knew. Take the pressure campaign on state officials. We know Trump called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and pressured him to find votes. We've heard the recording. But what we didn't know was what happened before that call, what the strategy was. Who advised Trump to make the call? What the goal was? Meadows can fill in all those blanks. He can testify about the planning meetings, about what Trump said privately, about what he was trying to accomplish, about whether Trump genuinely believed there were votes to find, or whether he knew he was asking Raffensperger to fabricate results. That context matters, that detail matters, and Meadows is providing it. The same thing goes for the fake elector scheme. We know that Trump allies in multiple swing states organized fake slates of electors who claimed to be the legitimate electors despite Trump losing those states. We know those fake elector certificates were sent to Congress and to the National Archives. What we didn't know for sure was how much Trump himself was involved in orchestrating that scheme, how much he knew, how much he directed. Meadows can answer those questions. He can testify about meetings where the fake elector plan was discussed, about Trump's involvement in coordinating it, about whether Trump understood that what they were doing was illegal. That's devastating testimony because it ties Trump directly to a conspiracy to submit fraudulent documents to federal officials. That's a crime, a serious crime. And Meadows is giving prosecutors the evidence they need to prove Trump was at the center of it. Now let's talk about why Meadows is cooperating despite having received a pardon from Trump. Because on the surface, that doesn't make sense. Trump pardoned Meadows for federal crimes related to January 6th and the election. So why is Meadows still cooperating with federal prosecutors? Why is he still testifying? Why is he still providing evidence? The answer is that the pardon doesn't protect him from everything. First, it only covers federal charges. Meadows still faces potential state charges in Georgia and Arizona. The Fulton County District Attorney in Georgia has charged multiple Trump associates with election interference. Meadows is implicated in that case. The pardon doesn't help him there. State charges require state pardons, and the governors of Georgia and Arizona are not going to pardon Trump associates for trying to steal the election. So Meadows is still exposed, still vulnerable, still looking at potential prison time if he doesn't cooperate. Second, even for federal charges, the pardon only covers acts that have already been charged or investigated. If new evidence emerges of other crimes Meadows committed, crimes not covered by the pardon Trump gave him, he could still be prosecuted for those. So his cooperation might be an insurance policy, a way of staying on prosecutors' good side so they don't look too hard for additional crimes he might have committed. Third, Meadows might just be trying to save his reputation. He's watched other Trump associates go to prison. He's seen how loyalty to Trump ends for most people. He might have decided that cooperating with prosecutors, telling the truth, is his best path to staying out of prison and maybe salvaging some kind of normal life after all this. Whatever his motivation, the result is the same. He's cooperating. He's providing evidence. And that evidence is devastating to Trump. Legal experts are calling Meadows' cooperation a game changer. They're saying it provides prosecutors with insider testimony that's almost impossible for Trump to refute. Because it's not some peripheral figure making claims about what they heard secondhand. It's Trump's chief of staff testifying about what he personally witnessed and participated in. It's documentary evidence from inside the White House backing up that testimony. It's a complete picture of Trump's state of mind and intentions during the critical weeks after the election. That's exactly what prosecutors need to overcome Trump's defenses, to prove he acted with criminal intent, to show a jury that Trump knew what he was doing was wrong and did it anyway. Meadows is giving them that proof. And once that evidence is presented in court, it's going to be very hard for Trump to explain away. Now, Trump's legal team and political allies are scrambling to respond. They're attacking Meadows' credibility, claiming he's lying to avoid prison time, saying he was never really that close to Trump and doesn't know what he's talking about. But here's the problem with those attacks. Meadows has documents. He has contemporaneous notes and communications that prove he was in these meetings, that corroborate his testimony. This isn't just his word against Trump's. This is documentary evidence plus eyewitness testimony. That's a powerful combination. That's what convinces juries. And Trump's team knows it. That's why the panic is so intense. That's why they're trying so hard to discredit Meadows before his testimony becomes public in court. Conservative media is also trying to downplay the story, claiming it's old news, saying that we already knew most of what Meadows is saying, that there's nothing really new or surprising here. But that's not true. We knew some general facts about what happened after the election, but Meadows is providing specific details, exact quotes from meetings, documentation of Trump's knowledge and intent. That's different from general reporting about what probably happened. This is proof. This is evidence that can be used in court. And it's coming from someone who was there, who participated, who has no reason to lie, given that he's already been pardoned for federal crimes. That credibility matters. That detail matters. And prosecutors know it. The timing of Meadows' cooperation is also significant. We're in November 2025. Trump is well into his second term. And suddenly this evidence is coming out. Suddenly Meadows is cooperating. Why now? Well, part of it is that criminal investigations move slowly. Grand juries take time. Building cases takes time. But part of it might also be that Meadows sees which way the wind is blowing. He sees other Trump associates cooperating. He sees the legal walls closing in. He sees that loyalty to Trump tends to end badly for most people. So he's making a rational calculation. He's protecting himself by cooperating, by telling prosecutors everything, by providing the evidence they need to hold Trump accountable. And that cooperation is now public knowledge. It's now part of the story. It's now something Trump has to deal with politically as well as legally. Because here's the thing. This isn't just about criminal charges. This is about Trump's political future, his ability to maintain support among Republicans, his ability to claim he did nothing wrong after the 2020 election. Meadows' cooperation undermines all of that. It provides concrete evidence that Trump knew he lost and tried to overturn the results anyway, that he lied to the American people, that he coordinated a conspiracy to stay in power illegally. Some Trump supporters won't care. They'll dismiss it as fake news or a witch hunt. But for persuadable voters, for people who are on the fence, this kind of insider testimony from someone who was literally Trump's chief of staff, that's powerful. That's the kind of thing that changes minds. That creates doubt. That makes people wonder if maybe Trump really did do something seriously wrong. And in a close election, that doubt could be decisive. That loss of support could be fatal to Trump's political future. So, Meadows' betrayal matters on multiple levels. Legally, it gives prosecutors the evidence they need to potentially convict Trump of serious crimes. Politically, it damages Trump's credibility and his claims of innocence. Historically, it marks a turning point where even Trump's closest allies are no longer willing to protect him, where the consequences of loyalty to Trump outweigh the benefits, where everyone is looking out for themselves because they've seen what happens to people who go down with Trump's ship. This is a cascade. This is a collapse. This is Trump's inner circle falling apart in real time. And Mark Meadows, the guy who was supposed to be one of Trump's most loyal aides, just became the most damaging witness against him. Okay, so let's break down the key points here and why this story is so significant for understanding where things are headed. Point 1. Mark Meadows' cooperation represents the most damaging insider testimony against Trump, yet we've seen other Trump associates flip before. Michael Cohen testified against Trump years ago. Other aides have cooperated with various investigations. But Meadows is different. He was Trump's chief of staff during the most critical period, the weeks after the 2020 election, when Trump was actively trying to overturn the results. Meadows was in every important meeting. He had access to every conversation. He knows exactly what Trump said, what Trump knew, and what Trump intended. And now he's telling prosecutors all of it. That's not peripheral testimony. That's not someone who heard things secondhand. That's the insider of insiders giving a complete account of Trump's actions and state of mind. That's devastating. And what makes it even more powerful is that Meadows has documents to back up his testimony. He's not just relying on memory. He has contemporaneous notes, communications, records that prove he was where he says he was and that corroborate what he's saying Trump said and did. That documentary evidence combined with eyewitness testimony is exactly what prosecutors need to build an airtight case. It's what convinces juries. It's what overcomes reasonable doubt. Meadows is giving prosecutors a roadmap to conviction. He's showing them exactly how to prove that Trump committed crimes. Point 2. The specific content of Meadows' testimony destroys Trump's main defense. Trump has always claimed that he genuinely believed the election was stolen, that he was acting on advice from lawyers who told him there was fraud, that he was just fighting for what he thought was right. If that defense holds, if a jury believes Trump really thought he won, then it's much harder to prove criminal intent, much harder to convict him of conspiracy or obstruction. But Meadows is testifying that Trump knew the fraud claims were false, that Meadows personally warned him there was no evidence of massive fraud, that Trump was told by multiple advisors that the election results were legitimate, and that Trump promoted the fraud claims anyway. That testimony obliterates Trump's defense. It proves Trump wasn't acting on mistaken belief. He was deliberately lying. He knew he lost and tried to overturn the results anyway. That's criminal intent. That's knowing and willful violation of the law. That's exactly what prosecutors need to prove to get a conviction. And Meadows is handing it to them. Point 3. Meadows' cooperation reveals the extent of Trump's direct involvement in illegal schemes. We've known for a while that there were efforts to pressure state officials, to organize fake electors, to create fraudulent certificates to send to Congress. What we didn't know for sure was how much Trump himself was personally involved in orchestrating those schemes, how much he knew about the details, how much he directed the people carrying them out. Meadows is filling in those blanks. He's testifying about meetings where Trump discussed the fake elector plan, where Trump coordinated with Giuliani and other lawyers on how to pressure state officials, where Trump made decisions about what to do next in the effort to overturn the election. That testimony ties Trump directly to the conspiracies. It proves he wasn't just a bystander. He wasn't just someone who listened to bad advice. He was the orchestrator, the person making decisions, the person giving orders, That level of direct involvement makes it much easier to charge Trump with conspiracy, with obstruction, with other serious crimes, because you can prove he was the center of it all, not just someone on the periphery. Point 4. The fact that Meadows is cooperating despite having a pardon shows how vulnerable Trump's circle has become. Trump gave Meadows a federal pardon, thinking that would keep him loyal, thinking it would remove any incentive for Meadows to cooperate with prosecutors. But it didn't work, because the pardon doesn't cover state charges, doesn't protect Meadows from prosecution in Georgia or Arizona. So Meadows still has legal exposure, still has reason to cooperate, still needs to stay on prosecutors' good side. And that's the situation for a lot of Trump's former associates. They have some protection, but not complete protection. They have some loyalty to Trump, but not enough to go to prison for him. So when prosecutors come calling with evidence and offers of cooperation deals, they flip. They start talking. They start providing evidence. And each person who flips makes it easier for the next person to flip. Because once you see that others are cooperating, once you realize that loyalty to Trump is a one-way street that ends in legal jeopardy, the calculation changes and the incentive structure changes, and more people start protecting themselves instead of protecting Trump. That's what's happening now, a cascade of cooperation, a collapse of the omerta that used to protect Trump's inner circle. And Meadows flipping is the biggest domino in that cascade. Point 5, this cooperation expands the legal jeopardy not just for Trump, but for dozens of other people involved. Meadows isn't just testifying about Trump. He's providing information about everyone who was involved in the efforts to overturn the election. Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark. All the lawyers who advised Trump. All the state officials who participated in the fake elector scheme. All the people who helped coordinate the pressure campaign. Meadows knows who did what. He can provide evidence against all of them. And prosecutors can use that evidence to bring charges, to flip more witnesses, to build cases against the entire conspiracy. So this isn't just about Trump anymore. This is about taking down everyone who helped him try to steal the election. That's why the panic in Trump world is so intense, because everyone who was involved now has to worry that Meadows' testimony implicates them, that they're next on prosecutors' target list, that they need to cooperate too before it's too late. So what happens next? Well, we're likely to see more cooperation from other Trump associates, more people deciding that protecting Trump isn't worth the legal risk, more witnesses coming forward with evidence, more documents being turned over to prosecutors. The walls are closing in, and every piece of new evidence, every new cooperating witness makes the case against Trump stronger. At some point, prosecutors will have enough to bring charges, to impanel grand juries, to seek indictments. We might already be at that point. The fact that Meadows is cooperating suggests that prosecutors are getting close, that they're building towards something, that they have enough evidence to start moving forward with formal charges. Now, Trump still has defenses. He still has lawyers who will fight these charges. He still has political support that might protect him to some degree. But Meadows' cooperation is a game changer. It's the kind of insider testimony that prosecutors dream about. The kind that makes cases winnable, the kind that convinces juries, and Trump knows it. That's why the panic. That's why the attacks on Meadows. That's why the desperate attempts to discredit his testimony before it even becomes public in court. Because Trump understands what Meadows' cooperation means. It means his main defense is destroyed. It means there's documentary evidence of his criminal intent. It means there's an insider witness who can testify about everything he said and did. That's the nightmare scenario for a defendant. That's what makes cases impossible to win. And Trump is living that nightmare right now. So where does this lead? Probably to federal charges, probably to state charges in Georgia and maybe Arizona, probably to trials that will dominate the news for months or years, probably to Trump spending the rest of his life fighting criminal cases with the very real possibility of conviction and prison time, because Meadows just handed prosecutors the evidence they need. He gave them the roadmap. He showed them how to prove Trump committed crimes. And prosecutors are going to follow that roadmap all the way to the courthouse. Mark Meadows' betrayal is historic. It's the biggest insider testimony against a former president in American history. It's more significant than John Dean testifying against Nixon. It's more damaging than any of the testimony during previous presidential scandals. Because Meadows was right there. He was Trump's chief of staff. He knows everything. And he's telling everything. That's the story. That's why this matters so much. That's why everyone needs to be paying attention, because we're watching in real time as the case against Trump comes together, as the evidence piles up, as the legal walls close in, and Mark Meadows, the guy who was supposed to be one of Trump's most loyal aides, just became the star witness in the prosecution's case. The betrayal is complete. The damage is done, and there's no walking it back. Trump's legal nightmare just got exponentially worse, and it's only going to get worse from here.